Nneoma, a beautiful young Igbo girl in her early 20s, had known hardship for as long as she could remember. Orphaned at a tender age, she found herself in the reluctant care of her aunt, Madame Uchichi, a woman with a reputation for her stern demeanor and unyielding rules. From the moment Nneoma stepped into her aunt's house, her life changed drastically. It was no longer the carefree childhood she once had glimpses of. It became one of constant toil, harsh words, and aching loneliness. There was no warmth in Madame Uchichi's home, no gentle embrace or kind words. Instead, Nneoma's days were filled with chores and criticisms, and her nights offered no comfort. Each morning began long before the sun peeked over the horizon. Even when darkness still draped the skies and the roosters had not crowed, Madame Uchichi's sharp voice would pierce the silence. "Nneoma," she would bellow, commanding her niece to fetch water from the stream that lay half an hour's walk away. The path to the stream was quiet and eerie, lined with thick bushes and whispering trees. Nneoma, carrying a heavy clay pot on her head, made the journey alone, rain or shine, sick or well. Mistakes were not forgiven in that household. A burnt meal, a misplaced broom, or even a slight delay could ignite Madame Uchichi's fury. A torrent of scolding would follow, sometimes escalating into a harsh slap or the sting of a cane. Nneoma bore it all silently, her heart heavy but her spirit unbroken. She had no one else in the world, no siblings, no relatives who would take her in. She stayed, not out of choice, but because she had nowhere else to go. And yet, beneath the surface of her sorrow, a quiet strength brewed. Nneoma clung to her dreams with a desperation only the truly hopeless could understand. She dared not speak them aloud, for fear they might shatter under the weight of her reality. Still, they lived within her, dreams of freedom, of love, of a world where her name was not a target for scorn but a word spoken with affection and pride. Her bed was nothing more than a thin, worn-out mat tucked in a corner of the sitting room. There was no pillow, no blanket, just the cold, hard floor and her thoughts to keep her company. Each night, she would curl into herself, tears silently tracing down her cheeks as she drifted into an uneasy sleep. But rest never lasted long. Before the first hint of dawn, her dreams were torn apart by the sound she had grown to dread. Her name, screamed with impatience and disdain. One particularly cold morning, she hesitated, hoping to steal just a few more minutes of warmth. But it was not to be. "Nneoma, won't you get up from that mat and enter the kitchen? Do you think I'll be the one to cook for you?" Madame Uchichi barked. Despite her pain, there was one glimmer of hope in Nneoma's life, Emeka. A shoemaker's apprentice in his late 20s, Emeka was gentle in spirit and strong in heart. He was the only person who made Nneoma smile, the only one who looked at her as though she mattered. Their love, tender and cautious, blossomed in secrecy beneath the wide branches of an old mango tree on the outskirts of the village. Hidden from prying eyes, that quiet spot became their sanctuary, a world apart from the cruelty she endured. Emeka was not wealthy, nor did he boast of grand things, but he was kind, patient, and full of dreams. He spoke with warmth, listened with care, and never judged her pain. After long days of endless chores and harsh words, Nneoma would steal a few precious moments with him. There, under the rustling leaves and soft sunlight, she felt human again. "Don't worry," Emeka would whisper, his voice steady and sincere, as they sat side by side, their fingers lightly touching. "One day, I'll take you away from all this suffering. You'll have peace and rest." And in those moments, Nneoma believed him, with all her heart. Surprisingly, Madame Uchichi did not object to their relationship. In fact, she seemed pleased by it. Emeka was from a poor background, and in her eyes, that made him a fitting match for someone like Nneoma. "That's the kind of person that suits her," she would often mutter under her breath, nodding with an air of finality. She saw no value in aiming higher for a girl she considered a burden. Emeka's mother, on the other hand, welcomed Nneoma with open arms. She had watched the girl grow over the years and admired her deeply, for her humility, her tireless work ethic, and the respect she showed to her elders. Though both families had little in terms of wealth, there was something far more valuable between them: love, understanding, and the quiet hope of a better future. Everything changed the day Emeka's boss assigned him to deliver a batch of handcrafted shoes to a prominent customer in Aba City. For a young man who had rarely stepped beyond the borders of his village, it was an exciting and nerve-wracking opportunity. The task was simple: deliver the shoes, make a good impression, and return home. "Take care of the shoes," his boss warned sternly. "This customer is one of our biggest. And please, behave yourself over there." "I will, sir," Emeka promised with a wide smile, unaware that the journey ahead would change his life in ways he never imagined. When Emeka arrived in Aba, he was struck by the city's energy: bustling streets, tall buildings, and people dressed in stylish clothes. He was eventually led into the sleek, air-conditioned office of Clara, the elegant and commanding CEO of a luxury fashion brand. She was in her early 30s, strikingly attractive, and exuded an aura of confidence and control. Everything about her, her tailored suit, the way she spoke, even the way she sat, told the world she was a woman used to getting exactly what she wanted. Emeka stood humbly before her, holding the shoes with both hands. "Hello, madam," he greeted respectfully. "I was sent by my boss to deliver these shoes." Clara's eyes lingered on him a moment too long, taking in his height, his well-defined features, the quiet charm in his voice. There was a flicker of surprise, perhaps even fascination, in her expression. It took her a few seconds to respond, as though she were coming out of a trance. "You're one of his boys?" she asked, her voice smooth but curious. "Yes, madam," Emeka replied. Clara leaned back slightly in her chair, a slow smile forming on her lips. "You're too handsome for such a dirty job," she said, her tone laced with amusement and something else, something more dangerous. Emeka blinked, unsure of how to respond. "Let me take care of you," Clara repeated, her voice low and deliberate, her eyes narrowing with interest. "You deserve more than this village hustle." Those words lingered in Emeka's mind long after he left her office. There was something unsettling about the way she had said them, like an invitation and a warning wrapped in silk. He didn't know it then, but that moment marked the beginning of a wave that would soon sweep through his life, and Nneoma's, with devastating force. Their brief encounter in Aba sparked an unexpected bond. Clara, captivated by Emeka's natural charm, good looks, and humble demeanor, began reaching out more. Soon, she was visiting the village herself, an unusual sight for someone of her status. Each visit was marked by extravagance: sleek clothes, brand new electronics, cartons of imported groceries, and envelopes filled with crisp naira notes. Emeka was overwhelmed. No one had ever treated him with such attention, such open admiration. Clara spoke to him like he was important, like his life mattered. It was confusing, yet flattering. His mother, too, was impressed by Clara's bold gestures and wealth. One evening, as they sat outside under the moonlight, she called him aside, her tone serious. "I know you love Nneoma," she said gently, "but think about what this could mean for us. Clara is a rare opportunity. With her, we can leave this life behind. Don't let it slip through your fingers, my son." Emeka looked down, torn. His heart still beat for Nneoma, but the world Clara offered shimmered with possibilities he had never dared to dream of. And for the first time, doubt crept into the future he had once imagined with the girl under the mango tree. Torn between love and luxury, Emeka slowly began to distance himself from Nneoma. What had once been frequent, tender meetings beneath the mango tree became rare and rushed. His excuses piled up like autumn leaves: he was tired, busy, running errands for his boss, or too preoccupied to talk. When Nneoma visited him at his workshop, hoping to spend a few moments together, he would brush her off with forced smiles and vague promises to meet later. But later never came. Eventually, unable to bear the silence and confusion, Nneoma confronted him one evening. "What's going on, Emeka?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why are you avoiding me?" "I'm just really busy these days," he mumbled, refusing to meet her eyes. But a few days later, the truth came out. Emeka stood before her, his expression unreadable. "I'm relocating to our bar," he said flatly. "I found better opportunities there. And I don't think I can continue this relationship." Nneoma's heart shattered. Her chest tightened as tears welled up in her eyes. She watched in disbelief as the man who once promised to love and protect her walked away without looking back. Weeks passed in a blur. Then the symptoms began: waves of nausea in the mornings, sudden dizziness, and constant fatigue. A visit to the village health center confirmed what she feared: she was pregnant. The news hit like a thunderclap, and things only got worse from there. When Madame Uchichi discovered the pregnancy, her rage was explosive. "Who is responsible?" she shouted, her face contorted with fury. "It's Emeka," Nneoma whispered, barely able to speak. Fueled by anger, they rushed to Emeka's home, only to find it empty. He had already moved to our bar. His mother, now dressed in fine lace and surrounded by signs of newfound wealth, was unapologetically cold. "We don't want anything to do with her," she said, shutting the door in their faces. That same day, Madame Uchichi, humiliated and furious, threw Nneoma out of the house. With no family to turn to, no money, and nowhere to go, Nneoma wandered the streets in despair. Her body ached, and her mind was numb with grief. She clutched her belly, unsure of how to protect the life growing inside her. As dusk fell, she walked along a deserted road, lost in thought, her steps unsteady. A car sped toward her. She didn't see it. She didn't hear it. The brakes screeched loudly, and the world went black. The driver, Paul, a wealthy man in his mid-30s, jumped out of the car in alarm. Seeing her collapsed, he carefully lifted her into the vehicle and drove to the nearest hospital. Doctors rushed to stabilize her. After an hour, one approached him. "She's stable. No serious injuries. And the pregnancy is intact," he said. Paul remained steadfast by Nneoma's side throughout her entire hospital stay, never once leaving her alone. His presence was a quiet reassurance amidst the sterile, cold surroundings, and it gave her a sense of comfort she hadn't felt in so long. As the day of her discharge arrived, Paul gently asked, "Where are you from? Do you have family?" His voice was soft, filled with compassion, but also curiosity. Nneoma, her eyes heavy with the weight of her past, found herself unable to hold back the tears. She shared the heartbreaking details of her life, her struggles, the abuse, the isolation, and the dreams she had abandoned. Paul listened intently, his heart breaking for the woman who had endured so much. He felt a deep urge to help her find a new path. Moved by her strength and the rawness of her pain, Paul quietly made an offer that would change both of their lives. "You'll stay here until you're strong enough to stand on your own," he said, his words carrying the promise of a new beginning. That night, for the first time in years, Nneoma slept in a warm bed. No shouting, no violence, just a peaceful, safe sanctuary where healing could finally begin. The next morning, Nneoma woke early, her heart heavy with gratitude and determination. As she watched Paul prepare breakfast, she took a deep breath and approached him. "Thank you for everything, the hospital, the accommodation," she began, her voice soft but filled with sincerity. "I managed to save some money back in the village. I'd like to sell sachet water in the streets." Paul paused, the weight of her words sinking in. He had known that she was resourceful and had a drive to build her own future, but he wasn't entirely sure if selling sachet water was the best option for her, especially considering her fragile state. He hesitated, then spoke slowly, his tone filled with both care and concern. "If that's what you want, go ahead. But be careful." Nneoma nodded, grateful for his understanding, but she could see the concern in his eyes. Still, she was determined. Every day, after completing her daily chores, cleaning the house and preparing meals for Paul, she would head out into the bustling streets to sell water. She was methodical, taking pride in each step, each sale. Paul watched from a distance, noticing the quiet strength she carried. Despite the hardships of her past, she approached each day with a sense of purpose, a quiet dignity that touched him deeply. But as Nneoma became more entrenched in her new life, trouble soon arrived in the form of Cynthia, Paul's girlfriend. Cynthia was possessive, demanding, and temperamental, and she could not understand why Paul had taken in someone like Nneoma. The jealousy and suspicion simmered beneath her surface, growing into something more dangerous. One afternoon, Cynthia barged into the house unexpectedly. She saw Nneoma in the kitchen, preparing a meal, and her face twisted with rage. Without saying a word, she slapped Nneoma across the face, the harsh sound of the impact echoing through the house. Paul, who had been in the other room, rushed to the kitchen in shock. "So this is your village girlfriend?" Cynthia shouted, her voice dripping with contempt. Paul immediately tried to intervene, explaining that Nneoma was staying with him temporarily, that she had nowhere else to go. But Cynthia wasn't listening. Her fury had clouded her judgment. In her blind rage, she picked up a kitchen pestle and advanced toward Nneoma, the weapon raised in her hand. Before she could strike, Paul stepped in front of Nneoma, trying to shield her from the oncoming blow. But Cynthia's rage was unstoppable. She swung the pestle with all her strength, and in the chaos, Paul was struck hard on the head. Blood began to trickle down his face as he collapsed to the ground, momentarily dazed. When Paul regained consciousness, his head throbbed with pain, but something deeper stirred within him. Rage. He could no longer stand by and watch as his home, his safe space, was violated. He stood up, his vision blurry but his resolve clear. "Get out," he said firmly, his voice filled with an anger he had never felt before. "You're not welcome here again. It's over between us." Cynthia, furious but now aware of Paul's determination, stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. As she left, Paul could feel the weight lifting from his chest. No longer would his life be tainted by her toxic presence. From that moment, Paul's home became a true sanctuary for Nneoma. It was no longer just a place of refuge, but a space where she could heal, where she could begin to rebuild the life she had always dreamed of, without fear, without violence. It became a place of peace, and most importantly, a place where she knew she was valued. Despite the growing weight of her belly, Nneoma remained committed to her small sachet water business. Each morning, she rose early, tidied the house, and prepared her goods, determined to save every penny for the child she carried. Her pregnancy was now impossible to hide, her belly round and prominent, but she kept moving forward, motivated by hope and a desire to give her baby a better life. One morning, as she prepared to leave, Paul gently stopped her. "You've worked so hard," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's time to rest. Let me take care of you now." His voice was filled with warmth and concern, and for the first time in a long while, Nneoma allowed herself to lean on someone else. Months later, Nneoma gave birth to a healthy, bouncing baby boy. The moment she held him in her arms, tears of joy streamed down her face. Paul stood by her side, his eyes shining with pride and wonder. He was overwhelmed with happiness, and from that very moment he embraced the child with a father's love, gentle, protective, and proud. He cared for Nneoma during her recovery, supporting her with unwavering patience and tenderness. Whether it was changing diapers, cooking meals, or rocking the baby to sleep, Paul was always there. As the months passed, the bond between Paul and Nneoma deepened. They grew closer, their connection built on shared experiences, kindness, and mutual respect. One quiet evening, while they watched their baby sleep, Paul took her hand and proposed. Nneoma, filled with emotion, said yes through tears of joy. They married in a simple, heartfelt ceremony surrounded by a few close friends who had become like family. The small celebration was filled with laughter, tears, and quiet joy. For Nneoma, it wasn't about the grandeur or glamour, it was about finally standing beside someone who loved her genuinely, without conditions or cruelty. As she held Paul's hand and looked into his eyes, she knew she had found the love, safety, and peace she had longed for her entire life. Meanwhile, far away in the city, Emeka and Clara were living a life of luxury. Their days were filled with shopping sprees, fine dining, and expensive vacations. Emeka never questioned where Clara's constant stream of money came from. As long as the bills were paid and the fridge was full, he didn't care. His mother, too, enjoyed the newfound wealth. Their once crumbling village hut had been replaced by a lavish mansion. But one quiet evening, their world came crashing down. As Emeka and Clara lounged in their opulent living room, a loud knock interrupted their peace. When they opened the door, They were met by a swarm of drug control agency officers. "You are under arrest for money laundering and drug trafficking," one officer declared sternly. Before they could react, both Clara and Emeka were handcuffed and taken away. Emeka was in shock. He had been completely unaware of Clara's secret life. Their desperate pleas were ignored. After weeks of intense investigations and court trials, they were both found guilty and sentenced to prison. Back in the village, Nneoma stood in her small garden, watching her baby boy giggle as he chased butterflies. Paul stood beside her, gently wrapping his arm around her shoulder. There was peace in their home, a quiet contentment that came from love, hard work, and healing. Life had finally come full circle. From pain, betrayal, and abandonment, Nneoma had risen, stronger, wiser, and loved. And Emeka? He had chosen greed and blind comfort over truth and loyalty, and he paid the price.
Thank you for watching. Tell us your opinion in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel Chukwudi Alolar Studio at Chukwudi Alolar.
Like and subscribe.